All right, guys, this is the one you guys have been hanging for. We are finally getting around to installing our desalinator into our caravan. The idea behind this unit was we really wanted to extend our time off-grid for as long as possible, and the number one thing that always brings us back to civilization is fresh drinking water. So this kit that we're going to be showing you today, what we're installing, is going to turn 80 litres of salt water or brackish water or bore water into fresh drinking water per hour. Just strap in, sit down, hold tight. It's all coming your way right now.
G'day everyone. Yeah, so this has been a long time coming, like Liz said. Yeah, we just haven't had a chance to honestly sit down and do this install. So glad to finally be doing it. We're really excited about what this is going to allow us to do. Like Liz said, if you speak to anyone who's spent any amount of time off grid, this is the number one thing that is going to bring you home is availability or lack of availability of drinking water. There's a lot to get through here as we go through. If there's anything that I leave out, please check the description below. I'll leave a lot of the stats and the information in the description below, as well as a link to the kit that we bought, so you can go and check it out for yourself. And as always, if you've got any questions, leave us a comment and I will get back to every single one of those and let you know as much as I can. If there's anything that I can't answer though, the guys at Watermakers Australia, where we bought the kit, are a wealth of knowledge and really friendly. And yeah, I got a lot of information from those guys. So yeah, apart from that, let's dive into it and have a look. Firstly, let's just go through and have a look what's involved and what comes in your kit. So how does this vary to a couple of the other options that get pushed out there? This is a proper desalination, reverse osmosis, water maker, whatever you want to call it. This actually converts, its primary role is to convert seawater into fresh drinking water. Not very common in the caravan market, extremely common in the marine industry, particularly in the yacht market. These have been around for years and years and years and used all the time in that industry, just not very common in the caravan industry. Let's go dive into it. Let's have a look through at what components are involved, and then we'll start figuring out where we're going to install this thing into our setup. Alrighty, so the kit is pretty comprehensive, and I will be honest, when you first unbox it, it can be a little bit overwhelming just with the number of components that are involved. So it isn't an all-in-one unit. It is sold as a kit with a range of components, and the reason for that is just to maximize the flexibility of installations, because obviously this is designed for the marine industry and for yachts, but also can be adapted like we are for caravans and things like that, to be able to, basically adapt it to whatever your setup might be. If you've got the space to install this in your tow vehicle or in your vehicle, if you're just touring and not towing, I think that would be a really, really good option because it's obviously a lot easier to get your car down to the water's edge to be able to pump in the water source, to be able to pump from the water source that you're utilising rather than the caravan. Our solution to that is we bought ourselves a 100-litre water bladder. That has been super handy just for transporting fresh water and drinking water out to our caravan. We're at base camp like we are now, but we're also going to use that same bladder for transporting seawater or whatever water source that we're utilising at the time to get that water to our caravan, to be able to desalinate it and freshen it, to be able to put it into our caravan tanks for drinking and for all our other day-to-day use that we need water for. This system will consume about 100 amps of power at 12 volts per hour, so 100 amps per hour. So if you are going to install it in, well, whatever you're going to install it in, you want to make sure that you've got a power system that can deliver that. It is quite a high wattage appliance. You do need at least a 2000 watt inverter to run it, and it does need 240 volt power as well as 12 volt. Primarily for the high pressure pump, which in our case is this Karcher K2 pressure washer. That doesn't come with the kit. You need to buy that yourself additionally, but apart from that, everything else comes with the kit. The advantage to the Karcher pressure washer is you can buy it from Bunnings or any major retailer around the country. Very cost effective. They're about 200 bucks, so easy to replace if anything ever does go wrong with it. The other advantage to them is they're very light and they have plastic internals, so they're not susceptible to corrosion from the salt water. So that's the unit that we're going to be using as our high pressure pump. The low pressure pump, all the filtration, all the gauges, everything else that you need, hoses, fittings, brackets, all comes with the kit. Now, like I said, it can be a little bit overwhelming when you first get the kit. Grab yourself out the instruction manual is the first thing and read through that. I've done it a couple of times already already, just get your head around how the system operates, what all the different components are, and it starts to simplify as you do that, if that makes sense, as you get your head around it. The next step I went through is just starting to pre-assemble some of the components. So this is, for example, here, this stainless steel fitting goes in the end of the membrane. That's a gauge inside the box there. I just left the box on there to protect it, and then the valve and everything here. I just started to put together the components, and it just starts to reduce the overwhelm a little bit when there's not quite as many components sitting around that you've got to install. So let's take a look at what the system at its basic level involves as far as the components are concerned, and then we'll start to move on to the next stage, which is figuring out where you're going to install the unit. Okay, so apart from the high pressure pump that we're using the Karcher K2 for, what else is involved? As I said, there is a low pressure pump, so that's a 12 volt DC low pressure pump that feeds the system. From there you go through 3 cartridge filters, so they're just your standard sort of cartridge filters. It comes with the filters and the housings, obviously. There's a couple of valves there as well. There's a few different gauges that come with the system, so a litres per hour gauge, so you can see how much water flow is going through it. There's a couple of different pressure gauges, so you can make sure you're not over pressurising the system. And there's a TDS monitor, which is the total dissolved salt, and that's going to tell you when that water's fresh that's coming out, so you know that it's ready to start putting into your tanks. If I've lost you there, just bear with me. We're going to go through it in more detail later in the video. This is just a quick run through of the components. Now, apart from that, you're going to get all your hoses, all your bracketry, all your different fittings that you need, both high pressure and low pressure fittings. So you can install this pretty well however you like, as long as the order of things doesn't change, as far as the order that it goes through the filtration, when it goes through the high pressure pump, everything like that. The heart of the system is this membrane over here. That is the reverse osmosis membrane, and that's the key to the whole system, and that is what removes that salt from your water to freshen it to be able to consume it as fresh drinking water. It's certainly not a quick and easy install. It's something you want to put a bit of thought into. Its location, installation location, and everything like that. So we're installing the unit in our titanium caravan. If you haven't seen our earlier videos, this van's about 4 or 5 months old now, and we're going to be installing it in the van. Like we said, although it would be really good in the tow vehicle, we're building a Land Cruiser wagon at the moment, and there just isn't room for the system in there. But if you had a dual cab canopy or something like that and you had a bit of extra room, that might be a really good option for you. Now, our titanium caravan is an east-west bed orientation, which means that most of the under bed storage area is accessed from externally. So apart from the full through tunnel boot that most caravans come with, we also ended up with this half-size tunnel boot on the offside or the driver's side of the caravan. In that space, we've already installed our Truma underbunk air conditioner. We went with that air conditioner just to give ourselves more solar real estate on the roof. And the original plan was to install the desalinator or water maker in here as well. We've since decided to go a different way with it, primarily because just access in here is a little bit tricky. Like I said, the system does have a couple of different gauges and things that you need to keep an eye on, as well as just reaching valves and things like that. And trying to do it all through this hatch, I thought was just going to be a little bit problematic day to day. And there is the need to change out the filters and give them a rinse and bleed the system and things like that. And there's just an opportunity for water to leak from the system. So I just thought removing it from inside the caravan might not be a bad idea. So what alternative do we have? Well, we've got this really big front toolbox on our van that is super handy for a whole range of things, but it has this area at the back here that is designed for your sort of camp chairs and your camp table, and that's exactly what we've been using it for, is for our camp chair storage. But I think because it can be accessed from both sides, and it's quite narrow and has quite a lot of vertical space that is underutilized, if we can install the membrane and our filtration and all that type of thing here, it's going to just give us, I think, just better access to it, and just for maintenance and things like that, I don't actually mind too much if a little bit of water gets spilt into the side of the toolbox here. The obviously downside here is we don't have power available, so I think our solution for the 240 volt power will just be to run a lead. The Karcher pressure washer has quite a long lead on it, so we have 240 volt inside our tunnel boot as well as that small tunnel boot there, and it's on both sides, so 240 volt won't be too hard to come by. And for the 12 volt, I haven't come up with a solution as yet for that, but I'll just have to find a 12 volt source. One option is just to put an Anderson or a SIG socket plug on the end of the pump and just plug that in manually as well. I also want the Karcher pressure washer to be removable from the system. It just plugs into the system, into the end of the membrane. So it's easy enough to unplug that, and then I can use that pressure washer for washing the van, washing the car, whatever it might be. So you get sort of that dual use out of the pressure washer. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to put up is the membrane, because it goes up the top. These are the little mounting rubbers that it mounts to the back of, and then there's 2 bolts that come in from the back side in through this that clamps the membrane on. So it's going to go on this side, but the bolts have to come through from here. So wherever you mount your membrane, you need to be able to get, well, with the mounts they supply you, you need to be able to get to the back side of whatever you're mounting it to be able to tighten up the bolts to get it through. The system is basically broken up into 2 halves. You've got the low pressure side, which feeds salt water to the high pressure pump, which is our pressure washer. From the pressure washer, it goes through the membrane at high pressure, and then out of that comes your fresh water. Now, the low pressure side is comprised basically of a filtration system. We'll be pumping out of the bladder with this is just a 12-volt low pressure pump. It's a variable speed pump, so you can change the amount of flow that's going through. From there, it goes in through 2 filters, so the 20 micron and then the 5 micron filter. The carbon filter is this, and this inlet is for freshwater flush. So every 7 days, the system needs a 2-minute freshwater flush of fresh water running through it. It's definitely one of the drawbacks to the system and to a desalinator, but we do have some ideas around that we'll share soon about how we're going to go about that. So once the seawater comes up through here, this is a one-way valve to stop the water going back that way. It goes through those 2 filters, and then we have a pressure gauge here on the low pressure side, so we can keep an eye on the pressure in the system. From here, there's one of the advantages to this system is that it's you can adapt it to suit your installation requirements. For us, it's going to make most sense for just having a quick release fitting to go from the outlet here from the low pressure side. From here, as I said, it just goes to the Karcher pressure washer, so we'll just use like a standard garden hose connection to take the water from here to the inlet of the pressure washer, and then from the pressure washer it'll come from the high pressure side of the pressure washer out of that and into the membrane. So it's all quick release fittings. If you wanted to, if you've got the room in wherever you're installing it and you want to have the pressure washer permanently installed, you can do that. They do supply the plumbing for this. I just adapted it. All these are just really cheap, low density poly fittings that you can buy from Bunnings or any local irrigation shop or anything like that. So if you do want to adapt and change the system, you can do that. If you want to change where these filters sit, height, distance, if you want to use flexible hosing, anything like that, you can do any of that. You just have to keep the sequence the same. So you have to obviously keep the hydraulic sequence the same, pump through the filters in the right order and everything like that. But apart from that, you can adapt the system to suit wherever you want to install it. Same with the gauges. You can take this gauge off here. That's just screwed into, again, a low density fitting, and then move that gauge somewhere else if it's more convenient for you. For us, I'm just going to screw this whole thing as a manifold, so that's fairly rigid already together because it's all just using screw-in fittings apart from the flexible hosing for the pump. So that is able to just be screwed straight to the wall of the toolbox where we've installed the high pressure membrane, and gets that installed all in one go. So I've thread taped all the fittings, nipped them all up, they're all done up nice and tightly, so it should be right to go just to screw straight in, and really simplifies that installation. Up until this point, it can be a little bit overwhelming, like I said earlier, just with the number of components and the pieces. But if you just start to fit it all together and I just loosely fitted it all to start with to get my head around how it all worked and the order of things and how it was all going to look and whether it was going to fit in the space I wanted to install it, and then built it from there. So that's how I'd pretty well recommend to do it. I've screwed the brackets on already so that I don't have to line everything up. I just, as I said, literally screw it to the wall. Now, when it comes to that freshwater flush that the system needs on a weekly basis, they do supply you with a tap timer. Now, depending on your installation, if you can get a water supply to this that's a permanent water supply, this has a timer on it that will do every 7 days for 2 minutes and automatically flush that system. So if you aren't living in your caravan or whatever you're installing this in permanently, but you do have a fresh water supply, say your house supply or something like that, when you get home from a trip, you can just use this tap timer, program that to the 7 days, 2 minutes flush, and it will just automatically do it. So that is definitely one option for us. Traveling full time, obviously that's not an option, but we fill our tanks at least weekly anyway. We don't often go more than a week without filling our tanks at some point. So I will just be using that opportunity whenever we're filling our water tanks normally, when we're not using the desal system, and we'll just be using that, whatever that water supply is that we're filling our tanks with, to give that system a flush while we're there.
Do you feel a bit like Jesus? I feel like you're turning water into wine, but salt water into fresh water.
I don't feel like Jesus. Oh, I see. I see what you're doing there.
I've just realised that lots of you might not have gotten that joke. We're not religious nuts. Simon, his nickname is Jesus. Why do they call you Jesus?
What do you think?
Look at these locks.
Make sure I put the right pressure gauge on.
You're a miracle worker.
You've called me Jesus before. That's just all the bits and pieces I pulled off to give me better access to screw it all on. Chances are I have to pull it off again at some point again, otherwise, but if I don't put it back on now, I'll probably forget where it goes. So yeah, so this is how it's ended up. So those other two filters are going there, those two blue filter cartridges, but we can see both our pressure gauges from here. And then in this space here, I'm gonna have another control panel that's gonna have our flow meter and our total salt readout. This is the outlet from that low pressure side, so that's where we can click on a hose connection for going to the pressure washer, and then it'll go around through a high pressure hose into the far end of this membrane. It comes out through this membrane here. This is our overflow, which is the brine water as we're running the unit, and then out of this little connection in here, that's the actual fresh water that comes out and will go to our tanks. So after it comes out of there, it goes through the TDS, which is the total dissolved salt readout. And when that's below the correct number, which I can't remember now off the top of my head, I think it's below 500 parts per million, then it's potable water, but this unit should get it down well below that, and then we can flick it over and start sending the water to the tank. One of those things, not a particularly difficult installation, it's just where we've decided to put it. It's extremely tight access, which is good in the sense that now that it's all in, it uses up a lot of what was otherwise pretty dead space in the van, but yeah, makes installation pretty tricky. All right, I'm going to start planning out where this control panel goes. All right, so I got a bit excited last night and did a heap more to the control panel and finished hooking everything else up. I'll give you a run through now of the last little finishing touches that I've done. The only thing I've got left to do is get power to the pump, and I'll show you how I'm going to tackle that as well. So it's looking really good. I'm really happy with how it's turned out. So let's have a look at it. So this is the little control panel I made up. So this plate here comes with the kit. So this is already pre-made, and it comes pre-drilled to mount this, which is the flow meter, which tells you how much water per hour is going through the system. It also comes with this hole pre-done to mount this, which is the digital TDS readout, which is that monitor I was talking about that gives you the readout of how much salt is in the water. I've then drilled a couple of holes in it. This one I've mounted the click-on hose connection, which is going to be our seawater or saltwater input. And then this is the dial for the pump. I was saying it's a variable speed pump, so I'll be able to vary that speed there. I might label these as well. And then I just bought some white angle from Bunnings, just a meter length of angle, and cut it up and then riveted it together and screwed it in there, so that's nice and solid now and just tidies it all up. I'm really happy with how that came out. We've still got full access to our diesel tank here, and I can see the gauge is just in there as well. I can still get a visual on that. You can see both the gauges that I need to be able to see for the desal as well, and get access in here to all these filters that I need to access. I can access the third one from the other side as well, from the other end. So from the back of that unit, you can see in there all my wiring and hoses. It's really hard to show because it's so tight in there. And then here I've clicked on the hose, and that's going to be the hose that leads. I can just pull that out from here, and is the hose that I can feed to the pressure washer. Now this output here that comes, this is where it comes out of the membrane. That's your fresh water supply. That goes down behind here into a little T-piece. I don't know if I can get it on camera, I probably can't. So that goes into a little T-piece that then gives the readout for the TDS monitor. And then I've actually taken that down out through the bottom of the toolbox. Through this, there was already a hole drilled here. This is the bottom of our diesel tank for our hot water system. There was already a hole drilled in Sikaflex there, so I just poked a hole in the Sikaflex, and for now that's just coming out the bottom. So that, where that comes out the bottom there, that's just sort of a temporary solution so we can test the unit out. Once we're happy that it's all running and working properly, I'm going to run that line back to our main freshwater tank in the caravan on a stopcock valve so that I can open that and let water in, and when the unit's running, straight into the tanks. Happy days. I might even put a T-piece on there so that we can also fill jerry cans and things like that if we ever need to do that. So that's pretty well the install complete. Now to get 12 volt power, I've actually on the front of our caravan, there's a 12 volt, a spare 12 volt Anderson plug that's got 12 volt power all the time that's installed there to install like a power jack or something like that if you ever want to put that on the van. So I'm actually going to use that power supply and just run it back into the toolbox there to feed to that pump. So it'll, I mean, obviously if it can run a jockey wheel or a powered jack, it's going to have the right fusing and everything to be able to run a nice little pump, hopefully. I don't know. I'm not at all a Sparky. Let me know if I've stuffed that up and that's not true. So that's the installation, pretty well complete. We're going to take it up to Burrum now. We're just getting ready now to pack up and head up to Burrum for the Pioneer Party. If you're coming along to that, can't wait to see you guys all up there. We're going to be testing the unit out up there, running the first few lots of salt water through it and testing it all out. That'll be in another video. We'll show you guys how it all runs and our thoughts on it once we get it up and running. But yeah, let us know what you think. Would you put a desal in your caravan? What are your thoughts? What are the drawbacks that you can see? What are the benefits? Yeah, we can't wait to get it up and running, particularly when we get over to Western Australia later this year and some of those more remote coastal campsites. I think that's where this thing is absolutely going to shine. So can't wait to get through that. Thanks for watching, guys. Hope you enjoyed this one. Don't forget to subscribe to see the rest of our adventures. Hit like if you found this video useful or interesting. And I don't know what we'll be doing next week. Actually, yes, I do. For a change, that our content's actually kind of up to date. Next Sunday is going to be the first video in our build series for the 76 Cruiser. Can't wait to share all that with you. And next Thursday is going to be our live. We're going live on YouTube as the final in our off-grid series that we teamed up with Everything Caravan and Camping with for this year. So we're going to be bringing the final episode of that. That's just going to be a Q&A, live Q&A. Bring your questions along. Anything to do with off-grid camping, living, off-grid travel. All of that, bring all those questions along and we'll be answering them live on that call. And ECC have actually thrown us an extra $100 voucher for that. So we'll be giving away $200 worth of vouchers to the Everything Caravan and Camping website, and we'll be giving away those live on the call. So can't wait to share all that with you. And yeah, we'll see you next Sunday. You can't tell, I'm pretty tired. It's been a big week of installing desals and building Land Cruisers and heaps of fun stuff, but it takes it out of you. All right, guys, I'm going to go and have a beer and chill out. We'll see you next Sunday. Cheers. I want to get everything up.
Well, you were just about to say it was the dumbest idea you've ever heard.
That's the dumbest place to put it, I was going to say.
How much of a guinea pig do you feel like?
Yeah, pretty big guinea pig. But I love this stuff. I love figuring it out. It's a challenge.